From the conclusion of the DeShaun Watson saga to following the darlings of Hard Knocks training camp with the Detroit Lions and the quarterback movement and big names that moved into the AFC West, it would certainly qualify as a busy offseason for the league that never sleeps in the NFL. And with the season now a little more than a week away, there's no time like the present to provide you with an NFL talk soup of analysis, opinion, and so much more. For that very reason, I enlisted the help of my good buddy, Travis Tyler, the host of the Football Savant podcast and Travis on Sports as well. Tyler joined me this week to provide his perspective on everything NFL as we get ready to blitz into another exciting and exhilarating season of NFL football. So, without further delay, I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited for you and I to engage in conversation about only football today. Great to see you, and thanks so very much for being here, buddy.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. I'm ready to go.
Absolutely, buddy. So when we look at the start of the NFL season, buddy, one of the top headlines this offseason has been the DeShaun Watson saga. So the first half of our conversation today is going to be about that, buddy. So what did you think about the whole scenario and how it unfolded, buddy?
Well, I think his, the whole public perception of the league has kind of taken a hit with the way things have gone in terms of the way they in terms of the penalties that have been given in those certain cases, and it's an unfortunate situation where the player asked for the trade and was a star player for one of the franchises, and they were not going to trade him, and then the trade market just completely disappeared. And you saw as his case went on, it seemed like everything just got worse and worse for him. So it was an unfortunate situation that he really, I guess he nothing really got answered as much as we wanted it to, but now it's really, it's time for him to, kind of try to move on from that. But not forget that it happened,
Yeah, absolutely, buddy. And as you know, some of his public comments have left a lot to be desired, buddy. So tell me about how you think Watson has been perceived in the court of public opinion.
I would say that the biggest issue was when the suspension was handed down, and he, tweeted out that statement saying that he was, that he maintains his innocence even though they've settled all the cases and everything. And I think a lot of the public took that as, well, if you're innocent, then why were you, then why did you settle and not continue fighting? So there's a little inconsistency, or not inconsistency, but a little bit of a disconnect between the public and his team in terms of that, in terms of what he was saying. And other than that, I think for the most part, he didn't really say much during the entire during the process from what I saw.
And do you think, this is my final question on this topic, but do you think he can sort of recover his public image?
I think there's certain the answer to that is sort of yes and no. As long as he's on the field and playing for the Browns, they're going to give him a chance to repair his image, and people are going to support him on the field. And those, as long as he's playing well, they're going to be in his corner as a player. But also, there's going to be fans that, you know, there was such a public case for all the sports networks and such a high profile athlete. They're never going to let him forget that it happened, and he's going to have to deal with a lot of adversity from that. And you know, I don't think he's ever going to be able to fully move on, but there's certain opportunities for him to just keep playing in the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely. But outside of the DeShaun Watson sort of saga, what other headlines caught your eye this offseason as we head into the season, Button?
Yeah, I would say that in terms of the NFL, one of the big things, and I might be in the minority on this, is the TV deals and the announcer shifts, or the broadcasting shifts. You got Al Michaels leaving Sunday Night Football for, I believe it was Amazon, and you've got ESPN adding Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. That changes a lot of, you know, public perception of what networks and what games to watch, because people like to listen to certain announcers sometimes. And then you have the accessibility of games with the schedule changing around to the point where they're putting, you know, you got the Monday Night Football doubleheader for in week 2 instead of week 1, and it's on 2 separate networks. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Thursday Night Football is only on Amazon Prime this season. I believe that's it. And you have these high-profile games being added at the end of the season as well, in the triple header on Christmas now. And then you have Sunday Night Football possibly leaving DirecTV, or definitely leaving DirecTV, and possibly going on to one of those streaming platforms at the end of the season, which, as an out-of-market fan, I'm intrigued by the possibility of being able to access more content if it goes to those streaming platforms.
The NFL on Fox ensured that they were an active participant in a game of musical chairs, which occurred this offseason with some of your favorite NFL broadcasters, with the greatest quarterback of all time and future Hall of Famer and Tom Brady agreeing to pick up a microphone and provide his football insights for the rest of America to enjoy once his playing days are over. Could securing Brady be the reason Fox Sports was hesitant to provide Troy Aikman a long-term and big money extension, which saw him take his talents to the worldwide leader in sports in ESPN? Tyler authors this response.
I think a lot of networks were aiming towards that. Or, you know, he's the one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback of all time. Some network wants him. If I remember correctly, they made that signing after Aikman had moved on. I'm not so, but I do think that the opportunity for him to take on an expanded role kind of may may have played into him. Well, yeah, it may have played into the way he's planning his future, especially with with how uncertain, I guess I would say, the announcing the the broadcasting teams have become so far this offseason, and how future of some networks, or how the networks kind of bounce around from year to year like that.
Yeah, and Travis, I have to tell you that I'm most fascinated with two divisions this season, buddy. The AFC West and the NFC East, buddy. I'm fascinated by both of those divisions, primarily because of the quarterback play and the moving and shaking in that division. So when you look at those two divisions specifically, what do you think of, buddy?
I would say let's start with the AFC West. I think I still have the Chiefs as the top team out there. It's just not the gap between them between all those teams has closed significantly in recent years, and especially in this offseason. I think that the Chargers are the next closest team with them. I love their offense. I want to see their defense return to what we thought was going to be an elite group last year and actually become an elite group this year, especially when they have a defensive head coach. And I also think that the Broncos absolutely improved. Russell Wilson, what they needed was a quarterback, and they got one of the best in the league in Russell Wilson. We'll see if that is actually the final piece there, or if there's something holding them back. I do have some questions on their offensive line, just because it's such a young, inexperienced group, from my knowledge. And I've heard people talk about how their offensive line can struggle. I haven't seen a ton of Broncos games recently, but and then the Raiders, you have that new head coach, you have Devontae Adams added in there. They were a playoff team last year. Their offense is going to be absolutely dynamic, and all the offenses in this division are fantastic. I just like with the Broncos offensive line, I don't necessarily trust the Raiders defense outside of Max Crosby. They tend to get beat in pass coverage quite a bit from what I've been able to see from them. And then in the NFC East, I think, right, that was the other division you were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the Eagles have the best roster in there from the acquisitions they've made, especially adding Chauncey Gardner-Johnson yesterday and adding A.J. Brown as a true number one receiver for that offense, where they've badly needed someone to step up there, and an all-pro player there. And their offensive line and their defense are both elite. And the only thing I really concerned about there is they tend to have some health issues at running back. The past couple of years, I think they've been down to like their third or fourth string running back going into some of the big games that they need to win to get into the playoffs or be a contender in the division. And then I also think Jalen Hurts he's kind of entering a prove it year, where he played well last year. He needs to prove that he can stack multiple seasons together like that, and be a star quarterback in this league. And then Dallas, I think, is a very solid group of skill players. Their offensive line has gone down, especially with they're missing Tyron Smith for quite a while this season, and they haven't really had a great center since Travis Frederick retired. Their defense gives up a lot of yardage, but last year they were able to overcome that with all the turnovers they created. My question would be, can they continue to do that at the same pace and continue to turn teams over and give their offense more of a chance? with the Giants, they've improved their offensive line. Did Brian Dable, offensive head coach, should be able to fix some of those things. I really like their receiving group, and obviously Saquon Barkley. I've never been sold on Daniel Jones, and I don't think he has a great offensive line in front of him that can, protect him the way he's flawed. And then with Washington, I think they've improved at the quarterback situation. Especially, I was very impressed with Sam Howell's play as the backup quarterback. And I know it's just preseason and he's rookie, but he played better than I expected him to play. And then the question for them has always been, do they have, or at least in recent years, do they have the weapons around that offense? You have a McLaurin and you have a Gibson. But is there enough besides those two in case the defense takes them away and their opponents take them away from certain games to be able to put up enough offense and win those games?
Yeah, absolutely. And Travis, selfishly, I have to ask you about the Lions, Brian, because I'm a diehard Lions fan. I'm actually going to the Lions and Eagles game next weekend. So tell me, what do you think about the Lions this year, Brian, and their prospects to be an improved football team?
Yeah, I'm actually a diehard Lions fan too. So we're right here. It's something we got in common. I love the direction they're heading. I haven't been this enthusiastic or this hopeful about the team in quite a while. I really like Dan Campbell. I think the receivers have improved a lot. I think the offense is going to be pretty good, especially if Jared Goff plays the way he did at the end of last season. And I think the biggest thing for them is going to be their defense. They haven't been able to get pressure on the quarterback in a long time. Seems like they've added some players that should be able to fix that. Their linebackers have never been great in pass coverage, and they do miss some tackles, so that'll be key. And then they need to have their secondary locked down. Jeff Okudah looked really good against Pittsburgh the other day. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do if in a season where he's fully healthy.
Can Jared Goff build on the late season success that he experienced a year ago to lead the Lions to a higher win total and secure his future as the long-term answer under center for the Lions this fall? Tyler provides his perspective on that very issue.
If you would have asked me this a year ago, I would say absolutely not. He's closer to the answer now than he was at that point. I still think he's not. If I really had to make a decision on him, I still think he leaves a lot to be desired, and he's not the final answer. But he can play well enough to get the team to a respectable level and possibly contend for the playoffs at some point while he's there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Travis, tell me which coach, whether it be an incumbent or a newcomer, intrigued you the most this season, Brian?
Yeah, I would say that I hate to give the homer answer, but I would say Dan Campbell's the guy that intrigues me the most. I think a lot of people are intrigued by what they've seen on Hard Knocks, and especially when he had that the buddy kneecap soundbite in his opening press conference, which, by the way, if you haven't seen the full thing of that, is at like 94 minutes of just pure passion and a guy that loves football and loves that team. And so you can see where his intentions lie in building and how badly he wants to build a winner there. And like I was saying, because of Hard Knocks, I think there are a lot of people that have started to like the dude and just are not necessarily rooting for the Lions, but are intrigued by how his approach is going to work. And I've I have a friend who's a Packers fan, and even he has admitted he's somewhat rooting for the Lions when they're not playing the Packers this season. So that it's always good to hear that from somebody, and I tend to hear that from people when I just start talking football with random people that I run into in everyday life. So it's pretty cool to see, and I'm intrigued.
Yeah, and Travis, when we talk about the notoriously bad teams, which team are you looking to have the most dramatic turnaround this season?
I would say out of those teams, I would say the Lions probably have the best roster. I would say the Jaguars have a good situation with their coach. But if I'm going, and the Jets are probably an offseason of adding a little bit more talent away from being a good team. But if I'm betting on a bounce back team, I would say, and bounce back to be clear on this would just be, it's not necessarily a playoff team. It's just improving their win total. I would say, especially looking at their schedule, I think the Lions can get 7 or 8 wins this season, and that would be considered a bounce back season for them.
And Travis, when we look at storylines around the league this season, which storylines will you be keeping an eye on to really define the trajectory of this season?
I think we're going to see a lot of a big impact from rookie running backs this year, and I don't think that's something that people are talking about enough. And it might not necessarily impact the playoff races, but you have Chris Carson retiring in Seattle, opening the door for Kenneth Walker III when he's fully healthy to take that job, and he is one of my favorite running backs to watch last season, and has elite vision and was just a fantastic runner. You have Breece Hall, who's supposed to be the starting running back for the Jets this year, who's going to have a huge year if he gets all those carries. He's a bigger guy with some decent speed, and he's a hard guy to stop. You have Dameon Pierce already taking that job out in Houston. Isaiah Spiller with the Chargers, even James Cook with the Bills, and then I think and also, of course, Brian Robinson from the Washington Commanders was supposed to be the starter before that unfortunate incident with where he was shot over the weekend. So hopefully he's able to come back and be at some point this season and be the player that he had been before that incident had happened.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. Travis, if you had to bet a week's pay on a player to have bounce back season, which specific player are you looking at to accomplish that, buddy?
I would say there were a lot of players that came to my mind when I started thinking about this, but the number one guy I'm expecting to see bounce back is Allen Robinson with the Rams. Was Chicago's number one receiver for a couple of years. He's been a Pro Bowler before, still young enough to be one of the top players in the league. He was in a really bad quarterback situation, a bad situation overall in Chicago last year. They didn't have a lot on offense. The quarterback situation kept changing from starters different weeks. His coach was obviously on the way out, so you don't know how much influence he had there. And I believe he was dealing with some injuries during the year too. So in LA with the Rams, he's going to have a much better quarterback, a much more experienced quarterback. He's joining an offensive genius as a head coach, and a team that is stacked from top to bottom. And where in Chicago he was facing a lot of double teams because they could focus in on him. He's going to be the guy he's going to be lining up on the other side of Cooper Kupp and have so he's going to be facing a lot of one-on-one matchups because you can't afford to double team him and Cooper Kupp because that offense is just going to tear you apart. So I expect a big year from Allen Robinson as long as he stays healthy.
And Travis, my final question for you, buddy, is if you had to push all of your chips at the center of the table, buddy, and make a Super Bowl prediction, who you got, buddy?
I have a hard time. I see the argument for a lot of teams, but I have a hard time going away from that Rams team. I know it's very difficult to repeat, but for me, their roster from top to bottom is still one of the best rosters in the league, especially offensively. And you get the running backs healthy for a full season. You had a lot of weeks without Cam Akers last year, so that's going to help them a lot. And their offensive line has gotten better, especially as the year went on last year. And as long as they're healthy enough down the stretch, then I have a hard time picking anybody else to beat them.
Fabulous, Travis. And tell me, if people want to get connected with you, buddy, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, you can follow a couple podcasts that I host, the Football Savant and the Travis on Sports podcast that are available on most podcasting networks and on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And I also run a website called the footballsavant.com that has some written content in there. And that's really the projects I have going for me right now.
Fantastic, Travis. Well, as you know, we have a mutual love and respect for the game of football, buddy. So I want to thank you for joining me today to talk a little football and to preview the season, buddy. It's most appreciated, and I want to thank you for being here.
Glad to be here, Kevin. Thanks for having me.